for. Um, he's been coaching with us for the last year, kind of off and on. Does some coaching here in the office on a weekly or monthly basis. Anything else I can introduce you by, Roman? Jim? Sorry.
No, just we're talking about scalability today. Specifically, going to talk about how to scale your business.
Excellent. Turn the time over to you, Jim.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Well, again, I want to thank you for having me on your call again. I was excited to work with business owners like you all to help you take your business to the next stage or the next level. For those of you who don't know me, I started my own business 19, 20 years ago, failed miserably, got a mentor, got back on my feet, and I've been successful ever since. And so today I want to share with you some of those best practices that I've learned for myself and hopefully pass that on to you. If anybody's ever been on a call with me, I do like for these to be interactive. I do not like coming to a call to show up and throw up on you. I really want to be able to apply the principles. So I've created a PowerPoint that has a lot of content in it, and I hope I won't go through all that content because I want to go in deep dive into some of the key components. So often I find that these things are common sense, but not common practice. Are you applying these principles to the full depth that you can apply those principles? So I'll be sharing those with you. So if you have any questions or something you want me to cover, please put that in the comments below. On your screen, there's a comment section, and send those questions or challenges to me. About 10 minutes into this talk, or maybe even sooner, I'll be looking at those challenges to really go in deep dive into that. The reason being is a lot of you are in different stages of your business. You might be new to Keyrenter, you might be a veteran to Keyrenter, and you'll be facing different challenges from profit to people to even processes. And so I want to be able to serve all of you to my best of my ability today. If there's anything on this call that you would like a copy of, a resource guide that I might reference, or one of my tools and templates, please feel free to reach out to Aaron and I can get that to him. So let's get started talking about scaling your business. So a lot of you in the property management business wear a lot of hats. Time is limited. And it's a juggling act, and that could be very, very challenging. So what I want to talk about is how to scale and change that, give you more time, give you more resources, be able to give you time to work on your business. So what would I want to know if I wanted to scale my business? The first thing is I would be clear or clarity on what do I want my business to look like. I believe I did a talk back in the day on the 5 drivers to success. These are the things that I find that if you haven't really revisited since the summit or any of the calls that I've done in the past, I'd highly recommend it. Knowing why you do what you do, your purpose and passion behind your profession is critical. Where you want to be beyond the business, your dreams and aspirations, and so on. Today, I want to focus on the what. What do you want your business to look like? How many people have read the book A Vivid Vision by Keyrenter? I was recently given a copy of that book by How Lamb with Best in Classroom franchise. And I started reading the book, and I really love what Keyrenter has to say in his book about a vivid vision. He talks about vision statements and mission statements for the most part are for big companies. They come together for a couple of days, and they create these 1 sentences, 2 sentences, and that's designed to motivate a company of hopefully 100 to 200 people. I don't know that 1 statement or 2 statement motivates me, but what I do love about in the book, it's actually in the first chapter on Vivid Vision, where Cameron talks about how he paints the big picture to his entire team, so the entire team has that buy-in to achieving the same goal. For me, I have a team of employees and independent contractors, and I realized in reading the book and revisiting the concept of vivid vision that I know the vision that I want to create for my business, but do my people know my vision? Maybe 1 or 2 know it. 3 or 4 used to know it, but might have forgotten it. And so I think one of the key things you can do to scale your business is to know what you want your business to look like, the big picture down the road. A lot of you, I'm going to guess, are worried about paying the bills, getting your people to perform, really just trying to get through the day. And I think that's going to limit the scalability of your business if you really don't have that bigger vision or vivid vision, as Cameron talks about in his book. Part of the vivid vision I find is your organizational structure. I talked about this at length in the past, but I'm going to take a little spin to it today, given who's on the call and how you can scale your business from an organizational structure perspective. I talk about what's called the 5 pillars to profit and performance. Out of all the functions, all the hats you all have to wear, a lot of times it comes down to these 5 elements. The first element being bringing in business on a regular and consistent basis. That includes marketing, networking, and selling. The next pillar is as you grow and get to 50 doors, maybe even 80 doors, you need to start to hire people to help you with things. If you don't, it's harder to scale without doing that, unless you're using certain softwares and systems out there to help you. But there's going to be a point where you need to hire and train people to help you get the work done, which is the 3rd pillar. The 4th pillar is admin, finance, all the paperwork that goes into running a business, and then eventually creating raving fans. And I find a lot of times that most business owners, they're doing all 5 of these functions, and that limits the scalability of your business. The trick of the trade is to get as much off your plate as you possibly can, because the more you get off your plate, the more time you have to build your business, run your business, and have a life. You can go a step further with this structure. In the property management business, you have showing responsibilities, move in, move out responsibilities, and even maintenance responsibilities. And there's a lot of vendors out there that could take a lot of this off your plate. For example, showings, there's organizations like Tenant Turner, Show Mojo. I have clients that use these softwares that free up a lot of their time in doing all the showings that they have to do. I know we work a lot with Tenant Turner in Keyrenter, and what's really great about that is that they will take one function, if not half a function, off of our plate, freeing us up to do other things. Move-in, move-outs. There's an organization out there like On-Site Pros that will assist with this and doing your inspections. And then there's maintenance scheduling softwares like Property Meld and other people like that. I use these only as examples. You might already have strong relationships with organizations like that. But for me, if I were you, I would look to get some of these things off my plate sooner than later. Again, be able to create a scalable business. What I want to do differently than I've done in the past is I want to go a little bit deeper on this concept. I was recently working with one of my property management companies in Houston, Texas. And I was talking about each position in his company. He currently has approximately 350 doors, doing $800,000 of revenue, and wants to get to the next level. And he doesn't have the best performing people in place to scale his business. And so I started talking to him what I call the red, yellow, green effect. The red, yellow, green effect is if you were to measure your key people in the positions that they have right now, would they be red? They're a problem. Yellow, they can go either way. Green, they're solid and sophisticated enough to be able to run that part of the business. In this example, you'll see that to bring in a business, they lost their business development manager. There's an oil company that can pay a lot of money and hired away their business development person. And so they're missing this element, and that's why it's red. So now they're hiring for that business development manager, and I call that yellow because the person that he has doing that for him is a property manager who's never hired before. And so we're working with them, and I have a strategic HR person on my team who will assist her, but it's not green because no one's dedicated to it. It's not red because someone's working on it, but it's yellow, and I'm concerned about that. Admin finance is green. It's only because his wife is that position, and I'm not going to call her anything else but green. Creating raving fans, they do a phenomenal job in following their systems and processes. But then when you get down to the property managers, you'll notice you have a red, yellow, yellow. First property manager is having some personal issues, and that's causing her performance to be in the way. The second person, the challenge with them is that they worry more about the money, the commission versus the mission. And the third one actually is now green. The only challenge they have is with maintenance, and we're solving for that. I point this out for you from a scalability perspective is that if you have all reds, then how are you able to scale? If you have yellows, you're closer to scaling. And then if you have greens, then you're more likely to be able to scale. So what I find that if you want to get to a point where you can accelerate the growth of your business is how can you either A, get these things off your plate by hiring somebody, or B, get softwares and vendors in place to manage it for you as if they were an employee, but they're doing the work. I believe that this is probably one of the key things in scaling a business that will make the biggest difference. What I like to know from you all now in the chat section is, what is your biggest challenge in scaling your business? What is the biggest challenge that you face in scaling your business? So take a moment to put into the chat section what you're facing from a scalability perspective, or even comment on these organizational stability and structure. This will be the interactive portion of our call. As you know, it's important that I help solve your challenges to the best of my ability. Jim, thank you for being the first one to respond with budgeting. As you're typing those in, again, what I have found that a lot of times what happens with people is that they're only thinking about the first level of the performance pillars, and that is the bringing the business, hiring, and training, and they're not getting the other things off their plates. And then when you are responsible for showings, move-ins, move-outs, and maintenance, then you have more hats to wear, bogs you down from going to the next level. My hopes is that you would just start to delegate these out to vendors and or people that you hire. Now, for some of you, you're probably thinking, well, Jim, this is great, but I'm too new and too small to be worrying about all of these functions per se. I would say what I'd be doing, though, is I'd be thinking down the road from a vivid vision perspective, a big picture perspective. What would you hire? Who would you hire for next? And how would you get that going? So one of the ways that I do that is through creating waypoints. So waypoints for me is helping you get through for where you are today and where you want to be in the future, is to figure out who is the next hire, or what is the next system or solution you're going to put in place. Aaron, I'd love to get your perspective if you're still on the call, is if I was 50 doors and below, and I wanted to go to the next level, what system solution would you have me put in place first, and how would I go about it?
Of here, as far as bringing in business, that row?
Yes, sir. Or both roles, actually. If I was at 25 doors, going to 50 doors, what I should be thinking about from a solution system down the road?
Definitely bringing in business. Right now, I wouldn't really worry about hiring and training. I wouldn't worry a whole lot on admin and finance. I would rely on Curtis. Obviously, getting the work done and creating raving fans. But I think your biggest thing is bringing in the business. And it's going to be a one-man show. I get that. But I think the most important thing, if I could tell anybody, and I think some of the people that have been with us for a few years would say, is the first year, if you just go out and pound the pavement, do what you can to create relationships, that first year, it pays off so much in the second year, the third year. It pays dividends if you do the work the first year. Is that what you were looking for?
I was. And so let's go to the other scale. If I was 100 doors or more, what do you think the next solution or a system I should put in place?
Hiring. Continuing to create raving fans. Bringing the business in. But I think bringing the business in and pounding the pavement is going to be slowing down. But you're going to be getting that next stage of hiring and training, because you don't want it to be just a one-man show. Maybe you have one person, one assistant that you're working with. Did you hire the right assistant? Is that person the right choice today? I know for me, it's been difficult for me to hire the right person the first time. So evaluate that. Is that the person that needs to be there? It could have been the person that needed to be there at 40 doors, but now you're at 100 or 125 doors. Maybe that need has changed and it needs to be somebody else. Do you need to move that person out and bring somebody else in that has different skills, a different skill set? Are you able to pay that person more now and get somebody with higher skill set now that you're at 100, 125 doors?
Awesome. Yeah, so the point of this is for you to think about looking down the road, not in just your current circumstances. And one of the ways I do it is creating waypoints and be able to do that. So as Aaron said today, in scaling my business, I want to focus on bringing a business, and then start to think about who can help me get the work done. And then as I, have more doors and I try to get the work done, how do I get the work done in the showings? Because showings and move-ins and move-outs and maintenance can be very, very overwhelming. And start to think about what you can do from a system and solution perspective to be able to scale your business. Most companies that we work with, they're not thinking about what's next. They're only worried about what's happening now. So start to think in the future that if you got the 50 doors or more, 100 doors or more, or even 200 doors or more, and so on, what would you be needing to think about next? So that's one of the things that I would be doing from a scalability perspective. So what else could you be doing from a scalability perspective to take your business to next level? One of those things is pushing past the pressure. Aaron said it, that when you're under 50 doors or less, there's a lot of pressure on you to be doing it all. And I think one of the things that get in the way of people's scalability is their not being able to deal with that pressure that's put on you in building a business. For example, in previous calls, I talk about the 9 stages of business. Most people think there's only 2 stages of business, broke and really broke. There's actually 9 stages. Stage 3 is survival. Stage 4 is false stability. Stage 5 is growth. And what I have found in scaling a business, these are the biggest challenges. Stage 3, trying to bring a business on a regular, consistent basis while getting the work done. And then when you get to stage 4, it's trying to get the work done with little to no people. And then stage 5, trying to grow your business and create raving fans. Well, you don't have people following the processes, or you don't have enough processes, and the pressure can be excruciating, to be quite honest with you. And the trick of the trade is pushing past the pressure from stages 3 to 4 or from 7 to 8 is to be able to figure out outlets, read, finding a mentor. One of my things I didn't share earlier is that I had a successful franchise. Many years ago, I built it and sold a very successful franchise. And how I was able to do that was 3 things that I remember. Number 1 was knowing what I ultimately wanted. At that time, I wanted to be one of the best franchises in the country. I would have preferred the world, but I didn't have the numbers for the world. I only had the numbers for the United States. And in the end, I ended up being in the top 20 out of 200 franchises in the system. The second thing that I did was able to have a great mentor who been there, done that. So when I hit the wall, the pressure started getting almost insurmountable. I went to them and said, what do I do to get past this pressure that I'm putting on? And that was the third thing, the ability to get through the pressure, because once you get through that pressure, it isn't as bad as we think it is on the other end. And so I find that trying to get enough profit to hire the right people to follow the processes can be very difficult. But if I know what I want, I understand the pressure is only temporary, and if I get a great mentor, I tend to be able to do that and succeed through that. So one of the ways of getting through the scalability of business is getting past the pressure that gets put on you. One of the ways of dealing with that pressure I've talked about in the past is block timing. So often people think time management is the secret to success, but actually energy management is the key to success. And so for some of you, your biggest challenge in scaling your business is going to be time. And if you can create a block schedule that helps you to focus your energies and efforts on one thing for a period of time, it'll make a huge difference. 3 books that I recommend in this concept is The 7-Minute Difference by Allison Lewis, The Power of Full Engagement by Jim Lohr and Tony Schwartz, and Stephen Covey's 8th Habit. I'll sum it up real quickly for you. In these books, they found 3 statistics or myths. The time management is really technically distraction management. Multitasking is really Swiss tasking, and working harder, more hours is not working smarter. They found that the average person is effective 23% of the day. That means in an 8-hour day, which most of us don't work 8 hours, but if you worked 8 hours, you'd be effective only 2 hours or less. According to Stephen Covey, if you have one goal, the odds of you achieving that is 97%. But if you then have 2 goals, I would say 2 roles, 2 projects, the odds of you achieving either one of those goals goes down to 64%. And then it takes 15 minutes to switch your brain from one activity to the other. So going back to multitasking, if you're doing sales in the morning, accounting in the afternoon, and customer service in the evening, you're not going to be as energetic or as focused as you could be. And I find that blocking out your time can make the biggest difference. An example of block timing would be if you were to do prospecting, whether that's owner outreach or realtor outreach, I would do that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then from those would come appointments that I would schedule in the afternoon on Wednesdays, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And then I would do all my paperwork associated with that activity on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, you'll notice in the schedule that each piece has its own place. And so I know when I'm prospecting, I know when I'm doing my paperwork, and so on. Now, for some people, that doesn't work for them, so they need to figure out what better schedule works for them. Another example is maybe I only have to do prospecting Mondays and Wednesdays because I'm growing and I don't need as many more doors as I did before. I only need to do appointments Tuesdays and Thursday mornings because that's when I'm the sharpest. Afternoon, I'm not that sharp, so I want to get my appointments done in the morning. And then paperwork in the afternoon. And then, as Jim Roman always says, I should have a life beyond the business, and so I should have a date night. And you'll notice in this schedule that not every block is blocked. There's room for putting out fires. There's room to work on the business. There's room to do what other things that you have to do in managing a business. But the point of a block calendar, we have found, it makes the biggest difference in scaling a business because you know when you're going to do what. A perfect example of this, I'm told, is when you have kids. I'm told that kids' routines are important. It is important for a kid to have routines. Guess what? It's also important for adults to have routines as well. The more you can replicate your business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, the more productive you're going to be, the more productive, the more scalable your business. I always like to say that block timing is the oxygen of your business. If you're not doing it, if you're not taking time for yourself and for your business, then you can only get so big and most likely get burnt out. So that might be something some of you want to work on to take your business to the next level. People and performance might be what's getting in your way. I could talk at length to this today, but I don't want to go too much into it because it doesn't appear to have a lot of the challenges other than hiring. But people and performance, one of the things I talked about at the NARPM conference 2 years ago is that most employees, and to include most owners of companies, have what I call the employee mentality or an employee mindset. The trick is to develop your employees into a management mindset to eventually a leadership mindset. Those elements is be able to get them to develop them to new heights makes a huge, huge difference. And so often we just delegate to our employees and then that's it. We leave it at that and we don't get into the next level. In regards to hiring, a lot of you had challenges with hired. I would love to know more specifically what your challenge in hiring is. So if you could write that into the comments section or as well as email me. I find a lot of times people's challenges in hiring is finding the right people, vetting out the wrong people, and then onboarding them so that they will actually end up being a performer for the business. In fact, I'll share with you, if you give me a moment, our hiring process. Is something that we do with all of our companies is that most people have a 3-step hiring process. The first step is to find them, interview them, then hire them. That's their entire process. And I find that a 3-step process is not effective enough to get the best people to perform. Whereas in most cases, we have a 10+ step process for hiring people. And in that process, we can vet out the wrong people, if that makes sense. So if you would share with me in the chat section, what is your biggest challenge in hiring? I would love to talk and speak to that. So on your screen, you'll see an article or, that I'll be more willing to share with you is developing the best hiring practices when you need them. It talks about things that people fail to do, things that they don't execute, which makes a huge difference in the effectiveness of finding and vetting out the best people. There's a process we talk about before you hire them, during the hiring process, but most importantly, after. As I mentioned, most people have a 3-step checklist. This is our checklist. We have phase 1. Before we go looking, we want our vision and mission. We want an organizational structure so they can see that they can move up in the company. There's different compensation strategies, whether you're hiring a business development person, a property management assistant, an assistant property manager, or property manager, to include attracting and finding them through the job post. Most people's job posts, to be quite honest, are boring, whereas I want my job post to be attractive, magnetic message that it gets the right types of people. Then we have a whole process for vetting people, selecting people, and then ultimately onboarding people. So I'd be more than glad to share that with you on how we go about all of this process and solving those challenges. Yes.
I think we just have people unmuted, Jim, and
Okay.
It's kind of confusing what's going on.
Jim, are you also looking at the comments there?
Me now? Thank you. I was trying to find the mute button. I do. I see the first. So one of the challenges, finding people and not having the time or money to pay for their changes.
Aaron, can you mute everyone but Jim? There's just a lot of background noise for me, at least.
So going back to Calvin's challenge, and then Javon, if I'm saying that correctly, you're finding people not having the time or money to pay for their changes or challenges. Love to know more about that. So for me, in having a process to follow, and if the person fails to do what they do, it a lot of times has to do with where you may have dropped the process. For example, I was told a story about Ritz-Carlton, and Ritz-Carlton did some hiring. And if you know anything about Ritz-Carlton, the customers are always right. Customers are always treated special. And one day, an employee went off on one of the hotel guests, which was unheard of its kind. And the manager, their reaction wasn't to fire the person per se, but it was to be able to say, where did we fall down in the process? So they went back to their checklist and they looked to see, okay, before we hired them, what did we do during the process of attracting and finding and vetting? What did we drop the ball? And then selecting and onboarding. And one of the solutions they came up with, and this was verified, that before every shift throughout the world at every Ritz-Carlton to this day, they read the vision and mission. They read the vision and mission before every shift, pointing out that the customers are our #1 priority. And so what I learned in that whole thing was, if I have a process and I continue to get bad people, maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. Sometimes you get bad people because you're posting on Craigslist or Indeed or on LinkedIn, where other people have great success with those areas. So one of the areas you might be having a challenge is where you're posting it. And all due respect, I've had people say Craigslist sucks, where other people say Craigslist is awesome. So please look into that, and don't assume just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it doesn't work for other people. We use Hiring Steps. It's a vendor that I met at NARPM. What I love about Hiring Steps is they market it out to multiple platforms to find people. The second part of the vetting process is asking behavioral questions. Most people don't ask behavioral questions. Some of the questions I would be asking is, what is your definition of success? Give me a time where you dealt with change. Give me a time where you dealt with a lot of pressure. Give me a time where you made a mistake and you got reprimanded. Getting people to give you those situational scenarios and how they handled themselves could tell you a lot before you ever hire somebody. So those are just some things to consider when looking at your hiring process. Some other things people said, how do I know if I need a service or an assistant? For me, in figuring out whether I need a service or assistant is if I have money left over and I want to get more things off my plate. So how do you do that? That is your revenue minus your expenses, minus your paycheck, and what is left over is what I like to call profit. What most people don't do, and this is a big mistake in scaling a business, is they do revenue minus expenses, not pay myself, reinvest it back into the business, and convince themselves that's the good thing to do. But if it were me and I were you, I'd pay myself sooner than later, because otherwise you're doing yourself a disservice. I did that for so many years and said I was reinvesting into the business, and ultimately I was lying to myself, because the fact of the matter is I didn't have enough money to pay myself, and instead of admitting that to myself, I said I was reinvesting it into my business. So how do I know to invest the next system, solution, or person? Is revenue minus expenses minus a paycheck, and whatever's left over is profit. And I would take that profit and put it into promoting my business. I would take that profit to put into people in my business, or I would take that profit to put into processes in my business. That's what I would do to scale my business. I would talk to your mentor or one of your Keyrenter support people and talk to them to work through that with you, because I think it would make the biggest difference. Last challenge in regards to hiring is each time that I had to change new hires, they didn't work. It cost to make up the time to go through the process. I think this is pretty powerful for everybody on the call, to include those who have 200, 400 doors. I recently had an experience where I hired someone, and I've been hiring for years, and I recently hired a copywriter to help me to create a franchise-like brand. It's time for me, now that I've helped other people build their businesses, to build my business to the next level. And in hiring this copyright person, her first day, she came to me and says, I can't access the internet. Can you tell me where the network server is? And I said, oh, that's down the hall. She says, oh, wait, can you point it to me? And I showed it to her. She goes, oh, there's the network key. Thanks. I got it from here. And I'm like, she has it from here. No one's ever had it from here. Each person has had to have me get the network key, go to the computer, show them where to enter the network key, and then get onto that key. She didn't need that. She just took care of it. And she's been taking care of it ever since. Any challenge that comes up, she solves for it. And by the time I come to see if she needs anything, she's already solved for it for the most part. And that's my first experience, true experience, to have what I call an A player or a green player, is if you have B players and C players working for you and they're not performing at that A game level, I think it's time to reconsider replacing those people. Because I find the people who get you to 200 doors or 400 doors are not the ones who are going to get you to 500 doors and more. The people that aren't performing after all the development you've done, all the processes you've done, sometimes it's the person, and you need to replace that person. So going back to hiring people that didn't work out, maybe you hired C players, maybe even B players, and I think it's time to look at A players. At first, you got to do what you can and can afford, and those typically are your B players. But I would start to develop them into A players, and if they can't become A players, it's probably time to replace them. And that's where that block timing comes in. You might have on a weekly basis to always be looking for somebody, developing somebody into that A player that you really, really need. I think would make the biggest difference. Last thing I want to talk about is breaking things down. So we're talking about people and performance. And I think that so often as business owners or new to business that we talk too big picture, or in some cases too general of a picture, and we wonder why our people don't get it, is I think we honestly don't break it down into bite-sized pieces like we should. I think a lot of times that's where the issue comes in. For example, as a property manager and getting the work done, you'll see on my screen that you have to listing related activities or leasing related activities. You have to deal with applications, maintenance, move-ins, move-outs, and even renewals if you've been in business long enough. And that, my friends, is a lot to be able to deal with. And so you can even break down maintenance even further into work orders, getting them qualified and quantified before you schedule them, then scheduling them effectively, then doing the work, and I can break that even down further, completing the work and putting it into the system that it has been completed, accurate notes, and then communicating to everyone involved, back to the offices, back to the tenants, back to the owners, are breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. And so if you just look at the upper tier, what are you doing to deal with your listing related activity? What is the processes that you're following to handle your listings and or leasing activities? Are you using a tenant turner to be able to assist with that? Your applications, are you the one who are dealing with that, or do you have someone on your team that could do this for you? And so on and so on. And the reason why I use as an example, I was working with a property management company, and sadly enough, they don't have a leasing solution. And I said, well, you familiar with Tenant Turner and Showmojo and organizations like that? And like, well, no, what do those things do? I'm like, oh my God, let me tell you how much time it could save you in dealing with your leasing or your listings. And they didn't really know that existed. And so they could take all of these things that are on their plate off their plate. Move in, move outs. There's a lot of things that they could be doing there. The point is that if you have a property management manager or an assistant property manager working for you, do you know what their bottleneck is? Are they bottlenecked in move-in, move-outs? Is that their biggest issues? Is renewals their biggest issues? If you can start to solve for that and put solutions in place like processes, like vendors and suppliers, I think that would make the biggest difference. For example, going back to the client I have in Houston, Texas, I was talking to their property managers and I was asking them what their biggest issues were as to why they couldn't scale, get more doors, and things like that. And they shared with me they didn't have time. And I then challenged that to say, okay, what don't you have time to do? And for one of the property managers is they hated the listing related activities. They didn't want to do their own applications and they didn't want to do the renewals. They wanted to hand that off to a property manager assistant. Where the other side, where the other property manager had no problems with that, their biggest issue at the time was the maintenance issue. And then I dug deeper and I said to them, well, what aspect of the maintenance issue is dealing with that? And if you break that down even further, you could see that it was getting the person who answers the calls to get the work order in place so they can schedule it the right technician. And then if you break this down to the technicians, they found out that their technicians weren't performing. And because they weren't performing, they weren't getting the work done. And this is just an example of taking one role, in this case, the property manager, who may be working for you or you might be it, and figuring out where your bottlenecks are. And then coming up with systems and processes for, again, listing and leasing related activities, application related activities, and so on. And starting with either the one that is slowing you down the most, the one you hate doing the most, or one that you just want to get off your plate because there's more important things for you to do. And I wanted to share this today because I just think so often, I think the reason why we don't grow and go where we want to go is because we've not broken it down for ourselves to this level, or we haven't broken it down to the people who work for us at this level. Any thoughts or comments at this time? I would love to open up your thoughts, comments, clarifications, because I think this really, between the red, yellow, and green and this, I think are critical components to taking your business to the next level, whether you have 50 doors or 400 doors. Thoughts, comments, perspectives.
Jim,
Yes.
Robert mentioned, how do I know if I need a service or an assistant?
I would want to talk to Robert about that specifically. Robert, if you want to unmute yourself and tell me more about that, because for me, I would want to get my leasing elements off my plate because there's great softwares and solutions out there for that. like Tenant Turner. I would like to get the move-in, move-out elements off my plate because I just don't like move-ins, move-outs, maybe. So there are softwares and solutions. So probably a lot to do with how much revenue you have left over, how much profit you have left over, but also how much pain you can deal with. Because say if I did use Tenant Turner to handle my leasing-related activities, there's some pain that goes with that because I have to work through another third party that isn't an employee that I can yell at, to develop. And so I might not be able to deal with that pressure or pain. Or hiring someone could be painful. It goes back to the pains of and pressure of business. It's your tolerance, I think, a lot of times makes a big difference. You're going to have pain either way, and it could be the lesser of the two evils or it could be the smarter of the two evils.
Jim, can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Exactly. Actually, on the revenue, less expenses, less pay yourself was very important to listen to. You're making a lot of good points, and I am at that point. I've just hit 60 doors, so I'm at that point where I'm trying to see how far I can go. What's the best way to get an assistant or a service to help me keep on growing? Because obviously, I can tell I'm slowing down because my workload is growing with all of the little things we have to do.
So let me ask you, so how many doors you have again?
60.
And what is it that you want to do? What is your next goal or next milestone, next waypoint?
I mean, my goal was to hit 100, but I've slowed down just because of other things that have kind of, in trying to grow my business and also to make some money. Obviously, I'm noticing that I'm slowing down. I want to keep the level up. I want to keep that level up to where I can grow, bring on the doors, but also maintain my services. And also start knowing that I'm like Aaron was mentioning, I'm getting to the point where I think at 80 to 100, I'm definitely going to need some help to keep on moving forward.
What is your biggest challenge now in going to the next level?
A one-man army, Jim.
Okay. And of all the functions that we talked about today, what is the biggest challenge in getting what done?
Actually, maintenance is starting to become a burden. It's starting to take a lot of time, and I need to get organized in my maintenance. I do have some vendors that sometimes I've got to switch over because they don't take care of it. And that's a process right there. I've actually been moving. I've had to change some vendors here and there just to get better service.
Gotcha. And when it comes to the biggest challenge with those vendors, can you give me one in specific? All of them, right?
Basically, I mean, making sure they call, take care of the customer, making sure you don't have to do the work for them, make sure they schedule everything on time, and that you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So what I would do, so if I was working with you, one of the things that I would do is in talking about the maintenance piece of it, I would start to break down the process of, what is my work order process? Am I getting enough information for my vendor to follow through on it? Am I scheduling that properly? Am I using scheduling softwares that are out there? And then is it doing the work? Is it them communicating to you, communicating back through a software or whatever, is to figure out of the doing of the work, what is the biggest challenges? And is it certain vendor or technicians? So I have a property management client in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the biggest challenge with some of their vendors is depending on who does the job. If it's a paint job and it's Bob always does a great job. But if they send out Pete doesn't do a good job. So it's like, I only want Bob on this job. Well, I can't. Pete's already scheduled. So, Bob is already scheduled. So you have to figure out sending the right vendor. And so part one is to figure out where are they dropping the ball. Part two is scheduling your time to follow up on your vendors versus waiting till the job is done. So I might use Mondays and Thursdays to follow up. So on Mondays, I give them the job. Thursday, I find out what the status of the job is. So Friday, I can fix anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. In fact, I've got an AC vendor who's phenomenal, and sometimes I think I overload him because I give him so much work.
So going back to your question, I would be looking at what is the biggest challenge in getting to the next level. And if that's maintenance, then I would start to figure out, could I get a maintenance coordinator? Can I use a maintenance software? Can I have somebody hire somebody as an assistant to oversee my maintenance related challenges or vendors, and then breaking that down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. It's having really, to me, I feel like I need an assistant more than a service, but that's where I'm trying to find out which is going to serve me better.
Yeah, well, feel free to reach out to me. We could talk through that because, again, how I solve for that and any challenges, I'm asking myself, given where I want to be in the future, what is my next milestone or waypoint? So I want to get to 100 more doors. That allows me to hire a full-time property manager, or allows me to use the solutions that Keyrenter suggested to me. So what is my biggest challenge getting to 100 doors? It's the maintenance being handled effectively. And then keep on asking myself, what's the challenge with that? What's the challenge with that? What's my challenge with that? That's what I would be doing.
Exactly. I just don't want it to bog me down to where I can't go after more clients and get more doors.
Exactly. Yep. So that's what I would do, and then start asking myself, would a software solution or person make the biggest difference? And so dialogue with Aaron or myself, or if you have a mentor, working through what would be the best solution. I'll leave you with this. I was working with an IT company, and they're looking to hire a customer service rep as well as a service director. One would manage the customers, one would manage the technicians. And after talking through it, I said to them, it sounds like you need both. And they go, yeah, now that you think about it, I needed both. So sometimes you need two people, sometimes you can find two in one. And so just working through that makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, real quick, just to finish off is, I mean, obviously a service seems more affordable than an assistant. And that's where I'm trying to battle that. I want to use a service, but I'm leery so far. But I think Tenant Turner seems like something I need to look at.
Great point. And what I would do is process out that relationship. And I should talk to Tenant Turner about this, as I actually want to do a talk on how to effectively onboard yourself with a system or solution. I think that so often, like Tenant Turner or virtual assistants that are out there, they don't give you a 5-step or 10-step process for them to follow. And maybe Tenant Turner does, but I haven't seen it in the sense that, well, step 1 is to look into the system. Step 2 is to talk to their customers. Step 3 is, what is the onboarding process? Because I think so often we set it and forget it, and we hope that Tenant Turner is just going to solve that. And it's not it's Tenant Turner's job to solve that. It is to be a solution. And so often we don't manage the relationship. We abdicate that role of responsibility. And in the end, it really wasn't Tenant Turner's fault. It was our fault. And there's so many, and Tenant Turner is only an example. There's Property Mail. There's other ones out there. There's Easy Repair. We put all that weight on the vendor, and we don't take responsibility for our part of that process, if that makes sense.
A good point. Exactly. Because we're a part of it whether we like it or not.
Exactly. And I would argue that if Tenant Turner has a 10-step process, that step 4 is my responsibility, step 7 is my responsibility, and to build that into their system and say, okay, let's go back to you, Robert. Hey, Robert, we're at step 4. Have you done this yet? Oh, no, I haven't. Well, great. Well, if you don't do that, Robert, we can't do step 5. Oh, I know. Well, how can we help you, encourage you, threaten you? Support you in getting step 4 done. And then at step 7, have you done step 6? Well, no, I haven't done step 6. Okay, we can't get to step 10, which is the complete onboarding process to solve literally hours and hours and hours of your life a week. Tenant Turner can solve for you literally hours and hours a week, to freeing you up from those leasing related activities. And if you don't do step 7, we can't get to step 10 for the real reason why you hired us, if that makes sense. So awesome. So to finish up, we're getting to the hour. You're very welcome. Thank you for sharing that. To finish up, I would start to look at the last thing, and that is to process out my systems and solutions. Here's just an example of a process map for a landscaping company. This is a process where if you were going to look at your challenges, you look at the business from A to Z. So in this case, this is a landscaping company out of Colorado, one of my colleagues was working with, where you have advertising, someone's interested in getting your services, you have a sales process, you have on-site appointment, bid, and so everything that you would ever want in a process would be written out from a big picture perspective. And from there, you'd break it down into bite-sized pieces. And each one of these boxes can be a process. So say this was a property management process. You have an owner that's interested in hiring you. And so you take that owner through a sales process. You then assess their properties. Then you give them a proposal. Then you have them answer any questions that they might have. And then you can break out those processes. And then I would do the same thing as I did earlier with the red, yellow, green. Which process in my business is red, yellow, green? And say, for example, and we just got done talking about maintenance, and I would want to know what is my workflow process. So I just threw this in just a moment again. Here's an example of a work order process flow from you receive the work, it gets assigned to a technician, and everything in between, and breaking down each one of these boxes here to its own process. And the reason being is that another reason why people don't perform is we don't know where they're falling short. So I think processes can make the biggest difference for you all in taking your business to the next level. If I had more time, I would be talking about how to bring in business more on a regular, consistent basis and knowing the difference from marketing, networking, and selling. I would be talking about the many hats that you have. But I'm at my time. I believe, Aaron, we're at the hour. Is that correct?
Yep.
I covered a lot over a short period of time because I know that we have different people on the call, and if anybody knows me, I really want to help as many people as possible. And so if there's one thing I want you to walk away with today are 3 things that I think will help you scale your business. Number 1, know ultimately why you're doing what you're doing and what you want to build. For me, I wanted to be the best franchise, the biggest franchise, the most effective franchisee in the country. Number 2, get a mentor. Use the vendors and suppliers that we have out there to help you, and understand there's going to be a lot of pressure while building your business, but there are solutions and people there to help you through that. So if I can be of any resources, please email me at jimroman at jimromanonline.com. You can go to my website at jimromanonline.com. I would love to send you some of these resources that I have today. But thank you, Aaron, for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. And just kind of to piggyback a little of what you've been saying there, if anybody has any question, who should I hire, or what product or service should I use next, talk to both me and Nate or anyone else here at the office. One, I would recommend utilizing us here at Keyrenter, utilizing what we offer and how we can help you. But I appreciate it, Jim. Thank you. If somebody asked, when do the Jim Roman audiobooks come out? Nice. I think that was a joke there.
After I go to Anthony Robbins' Mastery Series for my business, that's when I'm going to get pumped and go and do it.
That was, just did that, came home late last night, midnight. Would definitely recommend anybody to go out and do it. It is a little pricey, but if you want to chat with me about that, I'd love to do that. Thank you again, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I appreciate it. Forward to speaking with you all this week, and talk to y'all later.
Take care, everyone. Bye.